Good afternoon, everyone. It's Michelle Hill with Southern Inspirations. Happy Monday. Happy new and fresh work week. I'm so excited to continue to bring you Monday Huddles with Dr. Dawn Hamby. Good afternoon, Dawn. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Michelle?
I am good. I'm excited for now what is our second huddle at our all new time of high noon.
Exactly. High noon. I love it. I love it.
I do too. Well, we were talking a little bit before we went live, telling each other Happy Mother's Day, and we'll start by telling our viewers the same. If you are a mother, we hope you had a wonderful Mother's Day weekend with your family and friends. It's hard to believe it is already mid-May.
Absolutely. Where has the time gone?
I'm telling you, it's like we blink and almost half the year is over. And it's, in that same vein, some of us, myself included, have been home and working from home in this, isolated environment for 8 or 9 weeks. And I know that some individuals are getting ready to transition back to their offices. We talked last week about that the change and the transition. And that leads us right to this week's topic, and that is fear and not letting fear be in the driver's seat. But tell us what our title is, and I'm going to get it up there for us real quick.
Absolutely. The title for today's show is Don't Let Fear Take the Wheel. You are in that driver's seat.
That's absolutely right, because just as it was a change to go from our workplaces to our homes to work remotely, now many employees are going to go back to their places of work. And I would suspect that so many levels of anxiety and questions could arise. And, will my job be there? Will my job be the same? And so talk us kind of through what led you to say, oh, we need to cover this topic.
Absolutely. It's a variety of things. Fear is just a common human emotion, especially when we're facing change, right, Michelle?
That's exactly right.
Let fear kind of take the wheel and end up driving your decision making. So when we had our session last week, our Monday huddle, Michelle and I were talking about the fact that we could tell fear was kind of in the background on several of these topics. So when you're tempted to let fear take the wheel, remember you're in that driver's seat and there's nothing wrong with being afraid a little bit, right? That's a natural human emotion when it comes to the unknown. So it's not really a bad thing to have some fear, because it's really like your brain is sending you a cautionary message that you need to really kind of think about your actions before you take them. So that's not a bad part about fear. That's actually a good part. The problem is the fact that you need to understand that risk-taking is a natural part of life when you're stepping out into the unknown. As we transition back to work and look at what that's going to look like, it's hard to determine that. So it's okay to have some fear because that's how we grow, that's how we learn. The issue becomes, how long do you stay in that place? So that's why we thought this would be a perfect topic for today's show, is to look at 3 easy steps that I've utilized with both my clients and with my staff, friends and family, in advising them, hey, it's okay to be a little afraid, but just don't get stuck in that place, right? So today's topic in terms of fear is going to be to examine these 3 steps on how to kind of help you take control of that wheel so that you're not hampered from everything that your life has to offer.
That's exactly right. And I like what you said, that fear isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that in fact, it can be a signal that just causes us to examine what maybe is causing that fear and to identify those things that we need to work on. And as we get ready to share these 3 things, we don't have to be fearful of the fear itself either. And sometimes we are guilty of facing that. But let's just jump right into those 3 suggestions that you have.
Great. So the very first step I like to say is to play a good old-fashioned game of the what ifs. If you start with the what if game, what you're doing is you're really kind of trying to determine what might happen if you choose one thing over another. Now, assessing the pros and cons, I want to say, is not a bad strategy. In fact, that's been cited over and over again in the research as a really good decision-making strategy. The issue becomes this: how long do you stay in that game of the what ifs? You don't want to get stuck there, because if you do, there is this tendency to sort of end up becoming paralyzed with indecision. And if that happens, then ultimately you make no decision at all. So play a good old-fashioned game of what ifs, assess the pros and cons, but then give yourself permission to go ahead and move on to the next step.
I also like that, Dawn, that it's okay because to ask that question, what if? Because
Right.
probably most of us have heard, don't go down that road, don't question what if, but really it's all part of the process. And I like to sometimes ask, when I get fearful, to ask myself, what is the worst thing that can happen? What if X happens? And think of the worst things, and then walk myself through that. And a lot of the time, almost 100% of the time, that worst thing, when I walk that through my head and what could happen, isn't as horrible as I might have built it up to be in my own head.
That's right, Michelle. That is right. It usually is not.
we can go down all kind of paths when we allow ourselves to. All right. Well, that leads us to number 2.
That's right. So that's you. So in my opinion, the next thing is just make sure that you don't end up in this woulda, coulda, shoulda. Okay. It's easy to do that. In other words, you've made this decision. The worst thing you could do now is to torture yourself as to whether or not you've made the right one. So you probably have heard people say, don't shoulda all over yourself, right? In other words, don't get stuck in that place. You're responsible for the effort, not the outcome. Let me repeat that. You're responsible for the effort, not the outcome. I heard that years ago, and it always resonated with me because it empowered me to understand that once I make that decision, I'm responsible for actually doing something, actually taking action. But then what happens from there is really out of my control. And as Michelle pointed out, if you take it a step further, and you start thinking about, okay, maybe I did make the worst decision here. Maybe it's not the best decision. And then you start taking it through and trying to figure out, what's going to happen if that decision wasn't the best one. Well, do you know that top CEOs out there talk all the time about the fact that they have learned more about their own businesses from their ventures that failed, not necessarily the ones that succeeded. So just think about this. You make a decision, instead of getting stuck in that woulda, coulda, shoulda, you just accept that, you let it go, because then in the back of your mind, you realize you're not responsible for the outcome. And even if the outcome wasn't the best one, you're going to actually learn more from your life's mistakes than ever before, right?
Yes.
So a positive approach, it takes a little bit of that fear out of that, because you, again, realize that you're empowered to take action in your life. And then what happens as a result of that action? It's okay. It's working out the way it should. You learned your lesson. That wasn't the best decision. Learn from that and move on.
That's exactly right. And unless we take that risk and we are willing to step out there and put the effort forward, we might even never know what the outcome. And guess what? Sometimes that outcome is even much greater and much better than we could ever even imagine or hope for. It doesn't always be a negative outcome.
That's right.
Just don't get caught up, like you said, in the woulda, coulda, shoulda. And we can all be guilty of that sometimes, for sure.
So true.
Speaking of risk, that leads us into number 3.
Yes, number 3, I think, is so important. I have a whole coaching class actually on risk taking, because we've got to take risks. But the important thing is go ahead and evaluate the risk without risking everything. So I talk about a lot of strategies on how you can take risks without betting the farm, so to speak. That's one of our coaching sessions. So this tip is to remind you that whether your decision is really simple, maybe it's something fun, like trying to decide what fabulous dinner entree to order at some great restaurant. Or if it's something more serious, like making the decision to finally apply for that promotion you've been dreaming about. Whether it's simple or serious, just remember, you've got to take the risk. Because if you don't test those boundaries, you're never going to discover how far you can go. And as Michelle pointed out, the outcome might be even greater than you ever could have imagined. So risk-taking is, by the way, if you didn't know this, a common denominator among the world's most successful people. I mean, there's actually a reason people say nothing ventured, nothing gained, right, Michelle?
That's exactly right.
Exactly. And so I believe risk-taking is so important. And I also believe that ultimately, once you make that decision and you take that risk, betting on yourself, in my opinion, is never wrong.
That I love that. And I think I actually, yes, I think I put that in there. Yes, I love that. And when we do take those bets on ourselves and we believe in ourselves, that is going to help squash that fear. And that leads us to confidence. And I know that we're going to be talking about that next week. So anything you want to share, any little tidbit you want to share about that, little teaser?
A little teaser, absolutely. I was talking to Michelle earlier about the fact that I believe fear and confidence are so intertwined. I really do. And I have a session in Shop Talk called Cultivate Confidence Wherever You Go. And it's the concept of the fact that here is something else that you can control is your confidence in your abilities and your confidence that things will work out the way they should. And the reason I believe they're so intertwined is if your fear is really high, your confidence tends to be low. And then when your confidence is high, you tend to be less fearful. Now, are there times where maybe people might be a little bit too overly confident? Maybe they shouldn't be. Okay, yeah, there's that. But we're not talking about blind confidence. We're not talking about just walking into something naively. We're talking about cultivating that confidence in yourself, both personally and professionally. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about in next week's show. So very excited about that as well.
I am really looking forward to that. Mark and Amelia both joined us and said hi in the comments.
Hi, guys.
Well, I am looking forward to continuing the discussion on confidence next week and cultivating it and you sharing ways that we can do that. I do want to remind everyone, as I put in the comments, for additional information on all of the customizable trainings that Dr. Hamby offers, please visit drdonshoptalk.com. Mm-hmm. She offers group as well as individual trainings, coaching, resume reboot, as she calls it. And what are some other specialties, real quick, Dr. Hamby, that you have to offer? And I think you're offering a discount right now, too, a certain promotion, right?
We sure are. We're offering our spring special, which expires on May 31st. So you guys, it's very exciting. It's going to offer 20% off of all of our services, all of our classes. And on drdonshoptalk.com, on the website, there's a list of all the different presentations we offer. And as Michelle pointed out, everything we offer can be customized. So if you see something on there, perhaps it is the session on confidence building, or perhaps it's on this session about not letting fear take control or take the wheel, right? If those are sessions that interest you, but you want us to focus on maybe one part of it a little bit more, all of those sessions can be customized. And we offer everything through Zoom, through online programs. So, especially right now where we can't meet with you in person, it's a great option. So just reach out to me on the website. You'll have my email address there, and then I'm happy to send you more information about any of our programs. The resume reboot is very exciting you can book that right on our website. And what I do there is I take a look at your current resume and I update that for you using the latest verbiage, the latest layout that employers want to see in those resumes. And that package includes one Zoom call at the beginning where you and I will visit for quite a while about your strengths, about your work experience. And that way you and I can visit over the computer and I can figure out how to tailor that resume so it's really showcasing your skills. Because Michelle, sometimes people have a resume and the way it's written is just really not highlighting all that they can offer.
Right.
And as people transition back to work, their jobs may change, or they might be interested in a job that's now open. Well, what if you're not even realizing that you've got some transferable skills that even though you're in this one industry, maybe those skills could really be great for another job that you haven't even thought about. So if you reach out to us for the resume reboot, that's something that I can do for you. And usually it takes me 2 to 3 days once we have our Zoom call to get that back for you. So it's a quick turnaround time as well.
Wonderful services, especially just in this time of transition. And by individuals taking advantage of those, that again can help alleviate the fear and help build up that confidence.
Absolutely.
Know that your resume represents who you are. You've had some coaching, and you can just go forward into whether that's to your former position or whether that's if you are trying for a new position, you can step back into your workplace with a just a fresh new level of confidence. So all just things. All right. Anything else before we close today?
No, I'm just excited again to have our new time slot. I've heard from quite a few of our viewers, Michelle, that the lunchtime time slot is really working well for folks because they don't know exactly what their schedules are going to look like as they transition back to work. And 7 a.m., although I missed that time because it was great to start our day off together with that cup of coffee, that Monday morning huddle. But, many times people might be getting ready at that time as their schedules change. So the 12 noon, the high noon, I think is a great time slot for our audience to be able to tune in live. And then also remember that you can watch anytime on Southern Inspirations because it will be recorded there and you can watch it there. And then later on, I will post the video on my website. One last thing, I just want to remind folks that when we talk about these tips, I actually put that together for you in a very easy format for you to download for free. So as soon as we're done today, I will post our tips about not letting fear take the wheel. You'll find that on the website.
And that's up there too. And one last comment that just popped up. You will really like this, Dawn. Tony Metcalf commented and said that she got her bracelet and that it's and she said, thank you so much. So I wanted to let you know that she popped in and made that comment.
That's wonderful. We're so happy for you, Tony. Enjoy that bracelet. That's terrific.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you again for just another wonderful episode talking about not letting fear take the wheel. And thank you to everyone who is continuing to watch the huddles and support Dr. Hamby and I and what we're doing to bring you informative, relevant information, not only during this time, but for every day. For today's world of work, as you see in Dr. Hamby's logo up there. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful Monday afternoon, a very productive week using all the tips that I know you've learned from Dr. Hamby. And we'll see you next week to talk about confidence. Take care.
That sounds great. Bye, everyone.